right. Well, as you can see from the video, we're in a series called Baewatch, and this is our last night of it, our last week. And so instead of hearing one guy yap at you all night, we thought we'd have 6 people do that. No, just kidding. We're not experts up here, definitely not. We're a little bit older, which means we've probably just made a few more mistakes. And so we definitely don't have all the answers, but we want to, talk about it. Talk about some of the things that you guys want to talk about. And so we have an anonymous text-in number. That's not any of our phones. That is a number we created for this, so we won't know who you are. Or, if you have questions you want to text in. This is normally a no phone zone, but tonight we'll make an exception, okay? So that everyone can pull their phones out and do that. So I'm going to invite up our panel, our good-looking panel. So Beth and Carrie and Josh and Natalie and Matt, you guys find a seat up here? Yeah, give it up. So really, this night is up to you guys. The things you want to talk about, we'll probably talk about pretty much anything you ask us. I mean, there's probably a few questions that could not get answered, but we'll see. So you can text it in, and I'm watching you, Colby. But I'm excited about tonight. To kind of get the ball rolling, I asked these guys to think of it ahead of time. But you guys, what would be like in 30 seconds or less? We're going to try to answer these questions shortly so we can get to as many as possible. But in 30 seconds or less, what's a huge lesson you guys learned in high school, or a lesson, maybe something you wish someone would have told you in high school about relationships, dating, and or sexuality? Who wants to start us off?
I think for me, because I grew up in a Christian home, I was quite sheltered. I think the thing that I wish I'd known was that sexual desire is normal. So I really felt like it was something that I shouldn't experience as a teenager. So that was huge for me, and I think then too the struggles that ensued after that. For me, I wish I'd been brave enough then to ask somebody for help in that, and I wasn't. So I had youth leaders too, and I was too scared because I thought I was the only one that was weird enough to think these things or to feel these things. So I wish I'd gotten help too.
What was the question?
What would be like something that you learned in high school, or something you wish you would have learned in high school?
Oh.
Okay, well, in short, I wish that someone would have told me that, like, the decisions that I would have made in high school, I think, we think, oh, high school is just a phase of your life, you get over it and then you move on, but I think the decisions we make in high school do affect the rest of our lives in one way or another. They don't have to, define the rest of your lives, but they do affect it in one way or another, so, yeah. Does that make sense? You guys are all looking at me like, okay, cool.
I think the thing that I learned was that relationships are really, really tough, and there's really a lot of complications and make your life really stressful and kind of taking tests and stuff. But throwing sex in the mix is just multiply all that times 10, and it makes it that much worse. Relationships.
Like when you're not married.
Not married, yeah. Sex outside of marriage makes your relationships that much more complicated. How's it going, guys? High school was such a long time ago. I'm sitting here thinking, what did I think in high school? I remember this one time, so I had an older brother. Anybody have older brothers? It's kind of nice, because you get to watch them go through all the hard stuff. So I remember I was having a hard time breaking up with somebody because I knew that it wasn't right, and it wasn't bad. It was just I just know that we're not going to get married kind of a thing after 4 months or whatever. My brother, and it was just hard for me to break up with her. My brother's like, you know what, Matt, in a month and a half you'll feel better. I was like, all right, I'll try it. And he was right. Within a month and a half I was fine. And I'm glad I learned that, because you develop these like soul ties with people, and you think it's just unique to them, but it's not necessarily. Like, it's just like it's unique to humans in general, that when you spend that much time with someone of the opposite sex, even if it's healthy, there's sometimes it's healthy to end it, even if it hurts. And you know, you don't want that to be a pattern, but I definitely learned that in high school. So.
Wow. I did not grow up at all in the church, and I was raised in the gay community in Portland. So a lot of me and my friends, everything was up for grabs. Gender, sexuality, do whatever you want. There's no limits at all. And so I think basically when I became a Christian, obviously everything changed in my life. But I think one thing that I learned during that time, after going through everything I did when I was a teenager, was that there is, like, God's plan is real. Like, we are created male and female for a reason. Sex in the bounds of a committed marriage relationship in Him is the best way to live your life. And that there's a purpose and a reason for all these things. And if you're struggling with same-sex attraction, it's a normal human thing. Like you were saying, reach out and don't feel like you are completely identified, like your identity is not wrapped up in your sexual desires. And so a lot of the things that the world is telling you is a lie. It's just a flat out lie. And so you need to be surrounded by people who you can actually trust and talk to about these things to try to work through them.
I think for me, one of the best forms of advice I got is the whole that the grass isn't greener on the other side. So a lot of my married friends wanted to be single, and a lot of my single friends wanted to be married. So it was just, everyone just seemed to think that life would be better when or if I got to this level. And so someone texted in and asked, Tyler, what's your deepest, darkest secret? So I think we're going to move on. Next question. What do you do when you're dating someone who claims to be a Christian but believes in a different religion? Anyone want to field that one?
Sure, why not? Well, first of all, it shouldn't just be a religion. Christianity should affect how you view everything. So it's a faith, and it affects like your own identity of like why you believe you exist. And if you just see it as a religion, then it's still gonna be a conflict later on, because you're gonna start asking deeper questions when you get older. But maybe right now it's not as much of a conflict as it will be. But Christianity needs to be deeper than just a religion. Because a lot of times you can just go to all these different events. And it's the same thing as like going to school. You just go because that's what people are doing. But until it becomes like a real faith of your own, and you start asking those real questions. You have kids that are asking those real questions, like philosophical questions of why they even exist. You're going to differ on those things like incredibly if you start from a completely different basis. And not all religions start on the same foundation. That's a total lie. Like, there's so much different. Even between the three that are most alike, like Muslim, Judaism, or Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are the most alike. But they're so different. The reasons for living, totally different. So, anyways, I would say make sure you're asking yourself, like, why you're a Christian. And I think you'll probably end up realizing that you can't really build much of a future with someone that's on a different foundation. So.
And going off that, just as far as like, if you're a Christian and you're dating like a non-Christian, just remember that like, if you're a Christian, the deepest part about you is Jesus, should be Jesus. And like, if you're dating someone who's a non-Christian, they will never get to know the deepest part of you. Easy said. Like, they're never ever, you want like who you're married to, who you're dating, well, more so who you're married to know you in every single way, and they will never know you in every single way if you marry someone who's not a Christian. And I'm sorry, I want to be married to someone that knows me in the deepest way, right? So, drop them.
So the answer is break up with them.
Nicely.
Okay, let's keep moving. How do I know? How do I know if I'm dating a playa?
I think you know. If you're asking the question, you know.
Yeah, maybe. I think though it comes to, we talked about last week is community. Do not do this alone. Do you know the people around, like the whole, Roger said it all, group dating. Like, do you know this person's friends? And what do their friends say about them? So if this person is, if you guys are all by yourselves, you cannot make those decisions. You can't love is blind, and it's true, and it's supposed to be that way, and it's a good thing. But you need people around you who have the ability to speak into that and tell you, this guy, this girl, these are the things. This is what their pattern is. Leave them. Don't do this alone.
Be okay with saying no about stuff you don't want to do. And that's where I think having your limits in place is really helpful, because if you don't have your limits in place, your stopping points, your stop losses, you won't know where that is. And so, but then the willingness to say no.
Maybe next question here. How do we know what God has sent us? How do we actually know when God has sent us the person He intends us to be?
The one.
I still don't know.
Yeah, half of the panel is married.
So I think of this as, I don't believe in the one. I'll just say that. I don't believe in the one. I think that marriage is a set of skills and some commitment, a lot of commitment, and it's kind of like driving a car. There's not one car you can drive all of them. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't. You should drive any one of them. But the skills, I think, are really important. The skills are there. And I think, yes, the world would say you can have all of them, but I think there's an exercise in discipline that God calls us to be committed, right? So God calls us to one. And we need to exercise self-discipline in that. And there isn't just one. Just wanted to hold it. How do you know if you have the one? I think you just answered that pretty dang well. Yeah, Hollywood's a lie, Disney's a lie. I'll be honest, truly, we were raised in a culture that is looking for something that doesn't exist. It just doesn't. You're not gonna find someone who's exactly like you, and you probably wouldn't even want that if you did find that. So it's what are we looking for, And a lot of times this is gonna be kind of sad. This sounds really depressing. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, or break your hopes and dreams. But a lot of times when someone works for you really, really well, sometimes that could be for really bad reasons. They're finding. So, and I'm not a psychologist, but sometimes that can be really, for really bad reasons that show up way later in life. So I think it's just always going to take work, regardless.
So lots of questions are coming in, which is awesome. So let's kind of rip through these.
Do you need this?
Sure. So someone asks, what's the point of this series if we as high schoolers are going to date anyway? So let's see here. I don't think that the series was you're stupid if you date, but just challenging us to really think about it. Maybe sometimes we get discouraged dating in high school statistically, but I think there's a lot of good things you can learn from dating in high school as well if you are committed to sexual purity. So, have you ever gotten pressured to have sex with your girlfriend? If so, can you share how you got through that?
Who are they asking?
Probably not the ladies. I'm assuming the question is addressed have you gotten pressure from your girlfriend? Or maybe from society? Yeah, from peers, okay. I've been pretty blessed to have a good community around me and a pretty awesome girlfriend, so, No, but I definitely feel the pressure of the culture and the Disneyfication. I made that word up. Of the culture and how you're not truly fulfilled if you haven't had sex. The 40-year-old virgin idea, which I'm only 27. But so anyone else want to answer that? Matt, Josh?
Yeah, run.
Run.
Really good pair of running shoes. I mean, that's it. Just run. I mean, I would say that
I would say that I failed 100 times, but there was a lot of instances where I succeeded. I mean, even like with Carrie, wasn't pressure from peers, it wasn't even really pressure from culture. It was pressure, just sexual desire, before we're married, and that's real. And like Carrie said, I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. The desire is supposed to pull you together. But before you're married, it's important to exercise that discipline.
And he's saying we did exercise that discipline. In case that wasn't clear. But I think too in that, and I mean from the girl standpoint, but if you're a guy and if it's your girlfriend who is pressuring you in that, or even not if the culture is, but you should be communicating about this and your boundaries. You guys should be setting boundaries together on this. So if you have a girlfriend who's pressuring you into that, you might need to take a big step back. She may be looking for the wrong thing in that relationship.
Good words. And I think too, accountability. I know that I've got guys in my life like Tim, and if a line's crossed, he's the first guy that I call or text. This next question's for the three married folk. How did you know it was time to take the step and get married?
I knew who I was in Christ. I wasn't looking for somebody else to fulfill the deepest parts of me. And I know that might sound like a really pat answer, especially to you who grew up in church, but it's the truth. You're never gonna find the Disneyfication that the world and movies and music and everything tells you is real is not real. And I've been divorced, so I went through a really, really hard marriage. My first husband left me, and I think in my mid-20s, entered into that marriage, I think still very shaped by that lie that the world tells you that he's gonna do something that's gonna fill me and take away this ache inside, and that's not true. And if you go into a marriage or a relationship thinking that, you're gonna be so disillusioned and disappointed. So I think that's part of the reason why we're doing this series, is to prepare you for the reality of the world and to weed out the lies from your life, because we don't want to see you guys make really stupid mistakes. And like Natalie said, these mistakes will carry forward into your life. Things you see now, things you expose yourselves to, the sex that you have, it all goes with you. It's a lie that our bodies are somehow disconnected from our souls and our hearts. So.
Do you guys know it was the time?
Well, interestingly enough, I would say that I was the opposite of that, and that when I said yes to Josh, I was very much trying to fill in a void in my life that I had not fully filled with God yet. Though I was a Christian, I would say I hadn't, I was not giving him, God says the two shall become one. It's like the two wholes become one, not two halves. And I was still a partial, expecting him to sort of complete me. And so there was a lot of, fortunately we had God in our marriage, there was that, and I knew that it was a commitment. And so there were some rough patches with that. So for me, the dumb answer was I need to get married when he asked, and so I said, yes, of course. But fortunately he did. I saw him as a Christian man, and I had people around me. It was, my parents were in agreement with it. So there were people around me that were giving me that okay in my life. And God has worked through that, but I do encourage you. It's become that. Know who you are. Know that you be complete before you try to go, because he couldn't be everything, and then I was mad at him. That wasn't fair.
I think for me, it was I knew myself. I think you said that. I knew myself, and I knew who I was and what I wanted and where I was going, and it took me a few years to figure that out. But when I met Carrie, I was like, this is it. I knew, and I told people that I knew, and I'd only met her. it wasn't a feeling, it was she had A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and those are the things that I hadn't seen before in other gals, and so they checked off my list, and I was moving forward.
Okay, couple more questions about dating in high school. How do you feel about dating in high school? One student asks. Another person says, a lot of people say high schoolers aren't mature enough to date, so when or what is the line you cross to know that you're ready? And then a third one is, if you like someone at the church, but you don't want anything to become weird or awkward, how do you think someone should go about that? I might give this one to Matt.
The friend zone is always a safe zone. Because that's what you want anyways, you want good relationships. You don't just want to get someone, like kind of like, you know, trick them into a relationship or something. Yeah, you want like real good friendships, so.
Yeah, so again, like Tyler was saying, it's not like we were completely anti-dating in high school, but just remember, like statistically, you like learn the most about yourself like ages 18 through 23. You learn the most about yourself. And so if you make like dating decisions before age 18, like I can't imagine making a huge decision like that, like like under 18, because you don't really know. I mean, it might be hard to hear, but I don't think you guys really completely know everything there is like to know about yourself and your identity in the Lord until you start hitting those like young adult years. And so I read this book, and this guy said that he has been married to 5 different women, and they have all been his wife. This idea that like you are not the same person like through life, and so you want to make a decision not when you kind of are like a little bit shaky and unstable. I'm not calling you guys like unstable, but in high school you just really your identity hasn't fully like come into like it does when you're like 23, and so that's kind of why we say that, just because you change a lot through those college years. So yeah.
I always think it's like the longer you date, the more that if it's a healthy relationship, there will be sexual temptation and desire in it, right? So if you don't see yourself married in the next 2, maybe 3 years, you are setting yourself up for some crazy pressure. And so, I mean, how many of you see yourself married in the next 2 to 3 years? That, I mean, Miles Chamberlain? So, I mean, but it's a serious question. Ask yourself, how much sexual pressure do you want to put yourself under right now? So.
Let's see here. So how do we know that all this Christian stuff is real and we aren't just believing in a book someone wrote a long time ago? I really appreciate that question. That's a good one, and I'm glad you're here. Glad you're asking those questions. This is a great place to learn about those things. For me, it comes back to the person of Jesus. You know, we can talk a lot about the Bible and you know, how do we know this wasn't written by some dudes smoking stogies in a basement? You know, like, how can we screw billions of people? You know, but you really like start to dive into it, and you start to learn about Jesus and the eyewitnesses to his life and death and resurrection, and that we believe those are really factually events that are attested in history. And so that's my encouragement for you, to start looking at the person of Jesus, and as shown to us in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Bible, kind of right in the middle there. But I would love to talk to you more about that if you want to find me. Great question. This is a good one. What attributes would you say are most important in a person when considering a relationship with them? Let's go with one-word answers. That'll be fun. Let me hear from all of you. One-word attributes most important in a person.
One sentence. Okay. They love Jesus more than you.
But assume that that's the answer. We're not all, otherwise we would all get the same answer, right? So assuming, so if I'm going to add on that,
I'm going to say humility.
I'm going to say wholeness, independence, your ability to be
put that in one sentence. I mean, character. Character.
I would say, this is more than one word, but does he treat his mom and sisters and the women in his life well, for sure?
Mine to go off Josh would be like that, independence or security. Yeah, you listening,
How
Miles?
does she treat his dad? You said that, right? And how does she treat her?
Right, yeah, so that Natalie's
That goes both ways.
thing would go both ways. Someone is upset that Walt Disney is lying. Sorry.
Walt's dead.
Okay, a couple questions on boundaries and limits in a relationship. What should you do if you're, or what are your limits? And then the same person asks, what should you do if your boyfriend or girlfriend is not pure? And reading into that question, I think they might mean like, you know, if you're dating someone who's had sex before, I'd imagine, you know, or it could be, you know, in the relationship as well. Any thoughts on that? Limits, boundaries? You know, having a relationship with somebody who, you know, has crossed that line before, and some thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, it totally depends on the person, like where they're at in life, like how healthy they are. I mean, it really depends on that. I would say when you're finding these sort of things out, asking them a lot of questions of where they're at right now is very helpful, because many people have, you know, like lost their virginity like years before that or whatever, and you have no idea where they're actually at in that process. But I also think that that is something that you can still keep each other pure before marriage with each other and still build like trust before marriage with each other. So, and I think that may be just as important, if not more, or maybe even one of the biggest reasons why you stay pure is to build trust between one another and not use each other. So yeah, that's my best answer.
My parents don't want me to date. I want to respect them, but I want to date in a healthy way. Was this Miles? No. How do I go about that? So just that line between respecting their parents, but many of the students here get into that age where they're almost adults. Any thoughts? You guys are parents. You're kind of a young parent. Yeah. Any thoughts on parents who are recently?
Yeah, I say I'm trying not to answer to my own son here, because I would say to him, no, I think I mean, that's a hard thing. If your parents don't want you to date, then you have to answer the question of how big it is, how big a deal is it for you before God that you obey your parents? And I mean, it's a commandment. It's something that he says. When Josh and I were dating, my dad, at one point in the relationship, told me, you guys are done. I don't want you to talk to him again. I don't want you to, like, this is over. And for reasons that other people thought were ridiculous, had to do with his job and how much money he was making. And his parents were like, elope, forget it. And seriously,
How old were you?
I was 21. I was old enough to, or 20 at the time. I was old enough to make my own decisions. I mean, I was still living at home, but I mean, I was an adult. I could have done whatever I wanted to do at that point. And my dad is actually not a professing Christian. And so my choice at that time was, do I just say, forget you, Dad, I'm going to do what I want to do? Or do I trust God and wait it out? And I did. And I trusted God, and I said, okay, and Josh said, okay, and just, you know, long story short, but our story is beautiful because I chose to submit to God because I felt like that's what God wanted for me, was to obey my parents, even though it didn't make sense. And our story came around and have this amazing proposal story and all kinds of stuff, those of you that have heard it, because of that. And I have to wonder what kind of, if my dad and my husband would have any sort of relationship today if we had gone off and eloped and done whatever. Would I have the family I have? All of those things if I had not made that choice. So long answer to that, but I think that you need to just really hesitate when it comes, or look at it, analyze what does it mean to you that God says to honor your parents, and communicate with them. Communicate with what your ideas are, and what you feel, and what you might, what could you do? But that's my story.
This is a really good one because it's probably true of many of us in this room. What do you do if you aren't pure? How do you tell that to someone who you want to start a relationship with and they are pure? And I think I would slightly take issue with the question because it's almost assuming that, like, if you had sex that you're impure, that you're permanently branded and scarred, and there's something permanently wrong with you. And so the whole like pure and not pure, it almost seems like it kind of sets up a false dichotomy because we all make mistakes. We're all broken in this area in one way or another. But how would you guys advise this person?
So I had lots of relationships, and I had to basically come clean with all of those situations, experiences that I had before we got married. And I had to do it in a way that allowed her to tell me no. And so that was really hard. So I had to come to this relationship that I was really, really serious about, very open-handedly. And it was tough. Like, we actually had maybe 4 or 5 different things. Not all of them were me, but most of them were, where it's like this make it or break it conversation. This conversation could go badly, and this relationship could be over in 10 minutes. And that was really, really tough, but I felt like it was important that we talk about these things and get them out in the open and allow her to make an unpressured choice to continue with me. And so I had to kind of let go and step away and let her make an unpressured choice. And I think that's really important. As far as like the pure and impure thing, I mean, what Tyler just says, I think is good. Everybody makes mistakes, and as you get older, you're gonna find that, like, you make all the mistakes. You're probably gonna make a whole bunch of this category of mistakes, and it's just something you gotta come clean with. And it's whether you come clean with your wife or you come clean with your pastor, or a small group leader, or something like that. It's important to come clean.
Just one real quick thing. You're probably asking how to say it, but I would say it's really important to know where your purity comes from, and that we are all impure, like, without Jesus' blood. Like, so it's really important to get that in your heart and your mind, and like get a clean conscience before God, like yourself, and so that you get this shame thing worked out of your heart, so that you're free. Because until you get shame, until God gets shame out of your life, you'll probably do it again. And that's really most important, I think, is that you would know you can be clean before Him and not be sin conscious, but Christ conscious. And then, I just think that's a good thing to say if you're in that place right now and you're trying to figure out, like, am I pure, am I impure? Receive the grace of Jesus, like, in His blood for you, and like know that you can be clean before Him, just as if you'd never sinned. And I think you'll be way less likely to sin. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
This one's going to be for Beth, because Beth is the expert. A girl in my small group asked what the Bible says about homosexuality.
We really opened this in 30 seconds.
You got this. No, you can do it a little longer than 30 seconds. Beth, just maybe kind of give us an overview, and I have some thoughts, and maybe you do too. You love my thoughts? I'll give I'll just give like a 3-part overview. 3 things that I think are important for us to think about with this issue. First, the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself. So that includes people that are different from me, people that I might disagree with on how they live. I disagree with lots of people's sexual decisions. And so that could be same-sex decisions or heterosexual sexual decisions. So the Bible says I need to love my neighbor. The Bible says that I need to be humble. So those are two things that I think are really important that sometimes get missed in this discussion. And the Bible says that sex is between two sexually different people in a marriage. And that's where that is God's intention for that. So I try to juggle those three things when I think about the issue.
What the Bible says. So like I just said when I first started sharing was someone having attraction towards someone of the same sex. That attraction in itself is not a sin. It's a sexual act that is a sin, because I think what it comes down to, at least in my life, what it came down to, my friend who struggled with same-sex attraction is the one who introduced me to Jesus. And my mom is lesbian, my brother's gay, my uncle's gay. Like, I still have a lot of people in my life who identify as gay. They've taken that on as their identity. Their core identity is shaped by their sexual desire. And so when I first became a Christian, that was my number one question. And I think what it came down to for me is I actually got to know God and seek Him in His Word and experience His presence and understand who Jesus is, that He's the good creator of the universe who came down as a human to take all of our sin and break the power of sin and death in all of our lives, to reconcile us back to our Creator, who we are all estranged from. And so if you have that story, if you have that understanding of the reality that we live in, then it's a lot easier to look at all of the ways that society tells us who we are, who we need to be, how we need to define ourselves, and put it underneath what God says. So first you have to even believe. Do you believe that there is a God? Do you believe that you're created, that male and female are created to reflect His image? It's not just about us having sex. It's not the point of sex. It all points to Him. It all points to our awesome creator of the universe. And so once I started realizing, like right at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, started reading the creation, how the world was created, pressing into that, talking to God about it. I had no concept that what prayer was or anything, but I started talking to God about it, and realized that like all of this chaos that I was surrounded with when I was growing up, all these things that I was taught, all these things that I was doing are going against the Creator. It's not just like a man-made, like, I had a lot of Christians growing up who were telling me like, oh, you're gay, you're going to hell. Like that's a really, really shallow and incorrect understanding of the Bible. And so once you enter into a relationship with God, I think you'll start to see, like, yes, He created sex for a specific purpose. And a female and a female and a male is not how He created it, because He's good, because He has a purpose for you, because you're actually not living into how He created you. Find your identity in Him, not in your sexual desire. Does that make sense? We could totally talk about this for like 10 more hours, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Feel free to add.
No, it's a good summary, good word. So back to the kind of parents' question. If parents are against relationships, I'm presuming that means romantic relationships. Typically, parents are for friendships. But if your parents are against relationships, what would be a good way to let them know you're entering a relationship? So I presume maybe they're not as stoked about it, and they haven't just said, hey, you can't date, and you're like, well, I'm dating, So any thoughts on that one? We kind of hit that one. So honoring your parents, and when you move out, you do become Carrie was still living at home in her scenario, but when you go up to college, these are decisions you're going to be making on your own. Though hopefully you let your family and friends speak into your life. Let's go to, at what point do you open up to your date about your life? And I'm going to read into that question, particularly maybe the sexual decisions you've made in your past. Kind of. Is it?
I think there's a tendency. probably break this down into a number of different categories. You know, when are you emotionally close with your date? When do you talk about your sex life with your date, or your sexual history with your date, or your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is? I think it's important to just kind of understand human nature. Human nature is we want to be close to people, and I've seen this happen a bunch of times. It happened to me a number of times where you get to know somebody and you share really intimate secrets with someone, and then they're gone, or they tell your secrets to the whole world or something, and that can be really hurtful. And I think that you just got to be careful. You can't just share every single thing about your life on the first time you go out with somebody. I think there's some amount of let it be awkward the first few dates. Let a relationship grow. It takes time. Let it take time, and I think it will become clear as you develop trust with this person what needs to be told. I think that, and it comes with maturity. You need to know yourself before you know someone else.
One more for you, Josh. This one's really putting me on the hot cakes here. For Josh, how did you forgive yourself for having premarital sex? And what advice do you have for others experiencing the same thing?
I think going back to the Jesus answer is the ace that I would play here. Really, I think there's a lot of guilt that I think you could go down the path of some really heavy guilt. And I didn't just have sex once. Like, I would say it was a lifestyle of premarital sex. Lots of people, lots of times, lots and lots of times. It was a lifestyle, and I was a Christian. I would have said that I was a pastor's kid, even. So some of that is, and I wrestled with that guilt for a long time. And at some point in my life, I did have to say, I can't handle this. I can't bear the weight of this, whatever this is, this guilt, this shame. And I just said, okay, God, if you do forgive me, then I'm just gonna own it. I'm just gonna act like you did forgive me, and so I'm not gonna think about it anymore. And I'm gonna let you, if you want to convict me about these other things, then I'll let you do that. And so that path of thought, I think I had to go through several steps. Just in my walk with God to cover that ground. But I think it's really important ground to cover just for myself and to become whole. I said, attributes of being ready for marriage is being whole, and I think it was important that I reached that spot of my walk with God in order to be ready to be married. So 2 questions here from the same person. How do we actually know when God has sent us the person He intends us to be with? That kind of comes back to the one question. And then this one's a little more specific. If your dating partner is in a suicidal state, how do you lead them away from those thoughts and actions? Tell somebody. Definitely. It's good thoughts. What if you want to date someone that has already had sex?
I would assume you're not looking for someone. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that you know this about this person and you want to date them. I think that, and this goes back to one of the other questions that was said, I think that boundaries then just becomes even more important. Realizing that, like I think Matt said it, Josh said it, that if they have not fully dealt with that in their life, there is a very strong likelihood they would be drawn back into that. So if you know that about a person, then spending even more time getting to know them, getting to know what Matt said, getting to know where they are in that, what has their healing process been, what is their, how that's been, then, and then some clear boundaries, because it could be, it's just easier once you've had sex, it's easier to do it again. Once you've even any of those sexual behavior, anything that leads up to that, suddenly kissing isn't good enough, suddenly hand-holding isn't enough, and you want to progress. If you're with someone who has already been to that end and knows that, then they're more likely to go there if they haven't been fully healed. So just communicate about it, communicate about where they are, and accountability, and don't do it alone.
One more for you, Carrie.
come back to you, Beth. Carrie, why did you decide it was okay to marry Josh even though he had had premarital sex?
You know, that was one of the hardest decisions I've made. It really was. That was very hard for me, for the, you know, nice, sweet Christian, innocent in my, you know, my world. I still had plenty of my own sins and issues that I dealt with, but like I didn't know anything in that world. That was very hard for me, and he said, just as he said, I totally respect the way that he addressed that to me. I mean, it was a relationship, but it wasn't like, oh, there's no way I could say no to this guy. Like, he's got me hook, line, and sinker. Like, he definitely did it at a time when I could still say no. So he didn't pressure me into it. He actually wrote me a letter so I could think about it and process it on my own. And it was something then I just had to pray through. I talked, I didn't do it alone, I talked to people. So I talked to my mom, and other people in my life, and said, what should I be concerned about? Is this, and because he had always treated me with honor and respect, the trust was there, and I was talking about the way he had always treated me was trustworthy, and it was with honor and with respect, and I did trust where he was with the Lord at the time. And so I looked and realized I was a sinner myself, and I couldn't hold that sin against him.
Real quick, back to the suicide question. I really don't want to just brush past that. I think it's important, like, it is not up to us to, like, fix who we're together with, okay? So, a lot of times maybe someone will confess to you, hey, I'm suicidal, and it's like really like very common for someone to say, please don't tell anyone, but like they need some serious, like you need help, like, or they need help. And so just remember, like, if you're dating someone, like, it's not your job to fix someone or save someone or be their savior. So yeah, and so yeah, if someone says that they're suicidal, don't try to fix them, tell them that they need help. So yeah.
Hold on to that one.
Okay.
Natalie, so this one's for you.
Oh.
And I guess me too.
Okay.
As a pastor's kid, I don't know why that matters, but what precautions did you take before dating and while dating? Extra caution for us.
I don't get what pastor's kid has anything to do with this. Well, I haven't dated a whole lot, but I would say that precautions. I mean, my closest friends, kind of like, I mean, we've been beating this drum all night. Like, I don't have any secrets. You know, my closest friends, my family knows everything about me, and I think, I don't know, precautions. Did they say what precautions to take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Boundaries, precautions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like as a believer, your apprenticeship to Jesus, you're very open with everyone not with everyone you're around, but your accountability, you know. So my closest friends, Rachel, Nicole, Emma, you know, they know like everything about me, and they know everything about my relationships, and so Karina, you know, and so yeah, that's, I guess, a precaution I take with that. So, but it's no different for pastors' kids, just so you guys know. We're not a rare breed.
Got to keep that reputation, though, right? So it's not harder for pastors' kids?
Yep, the same boundaries, I guess, that we encourage for all of you guys, you know. This is a good one for Beth. Where'd it go? Come back. Here it is. Being gay, I have a hard time accepting who I am. Is there a good way to allow myself to accept who I am?
Come talk to me afterwards. Wow, there's so much to unpack there. Who you are. Those are really big questions to say who you are, and especially at this age to really think that you know who you are. I'm not trying to say that in a disrespectful way, but I've been there myself. And yeah, I guess I would just want to ask you, like, where are you at with God? Like, if you know who you are, do you know your Creator who created you and what God says about you? So yeah, I mean, I would say encourage anyone here who struggles with that, same-sex attraction, identifying as gay, even if you're a Christian and you don't identify as gay and you identify as a Christ follower, but you have same-sex attractions, like, talk to me, talk to people around you. There's safe people here to talk to. Find those safe people. Maybe there are not some safe people, so use discernment. Find the safe people who you can process these things with. I mean, Sabina, Tyler, me, Nat, I'd say Josh would be a good person, Matt, like, Carrie. Maybe not Carrie. This church-going girl. No, I'm just kidding. But there's safe people to talk to. We're so happy you're here. Glad you're here. You're loved. You're welcome here. Yeah. I don't know, did I answer that?
So this person sent this in twice, so I knew it was important. How can I prevent myself from being attracted to my friends' girlfriends? Girlfriends? It's plural. Okay, interesting. Well, as Beth said, a lot of us experience attractions that we can't act on. That is for all of us, and so it's okay to be attracted to your friend's girlfriend. It's props to your friend, you know. Be happy for him, and don't try to snake him, you know. So.
Seriously though, adding to that, you guys, it's not going to change for the rest of your life. There will be times when you will, it's the discipline that you learn now that will keep you. That's why there is no the one. It's because marriage is a decision, it's a commitment, it's a choice to choose one person every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, just because you get married does not mean your attractions to other people go away. Absolutely not. Yeah, you're not dead. Oh my goodness. Yeah, exactly. Like, marriage is a covenant. Like, it's a covenant relationship. Like, we are in a covenant relationship with God. We're in a covenant relationship with our spouse. That's completely different than what the world and society tells you, and movies and Disney and all that. So your feelings, you will be attracted to someone else. I guarantee it. Like, and what would the world tell you? Oh, that's who I am. Oh, I'm having these feelings. Now I need to, maybe that person's the one. Yeah, maybe you're not the one. Maybe that person's the one. My soulmate's finally arrived. Yeah, that's a lie. So, it's a choice. Love is a choice. Love is not feelings. It's not feelings.
So this question came in 3 times, so I don't know if that was a phone glitch or if, but since we didn't get to it, I feel like maybe we should. My friend just ended a, quote, relationship with someone after finding out from a different person they weren't pure. I know they still really like each other. How can they regain trust? Any quick thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm confused about one.
And I totally just accidentally deleted it. So basically, how can I oh, you have it on yours? Oh, look at that. Good technology.
Okay, so my friend just ended a relationship with someone after finding out from a different person that they weren't pure. I know they really like each other. How can they regain trust?
Oh, wow.
So I realize that, like, as students, you guys, this, I'm kind of treading on thin ice here, but there's a lot of weight put on virginity and this thing that you guys have, many of you have done, but many of you have not done. And I want to kind of de-emphasize that a little bit. I mean, it's such a big deal when you're, in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. And as you get older, it's less and less and less of a deal. There's fewer and fewer people that haven't had sex. And so this situation is I think it's pretty common in high school students. They think it's this huge deal that someone has had sex, and spiritually it kind of is. It's an indication that they're maybe lost, probably lost. And so, man, there's just so many, you could ask probably 100 questions about this situation and not really ever address the entire thing. So it's hard to address this one situation in a public setting and really do it any justice. I think communicating, maybe just a short answer would be communicating with the person and trying to come up with, the reasons or what happened and get a backstory. Like if I was getting married and I was investigating, my future spouse, I would ask a lot of questions. And that's kind of what Carrie and I did. We went through this process of communicating with each other, making sure that we were okay with each other.
To kind of follow that one up, what's the best way to mend a broken romantic relationship back to a healthy friendship? Or is it possible?
The question way back at the beginning that was, why in the world are we talking about all this stuff? We're gonna date anyway. And you know, you guys, it's because this stuff is for real. It's meant to be forever, and it hurts. And yeah, you're playing with fire here, so you are gonna get hurt, and we don't want you to get hurt. And things like that, how do you take something that was romantic and just go back to friends? I don't know. I don't know. So you can try obviously keeping boundaries and distances, communicating, hey, we would like to try to, but you can't put it all back in the box. It doesn't go. So keep it in the box.
And I think to follow that up, you know, romantic doesn't necessarily mean they were sexually active, though it might, you know, but, you know, I think that hanging out in groups and stuff, typically, if, you know, you're alone, then it's hard, you know, it's easy to rekindle some of those things. This question has to do with sexual purity after you've already maybe crossed that line. After you have sex, it's hard not to desire it as much, so how do you learn not to fall in those temptations, and how do you discipline yourself to not continue to give yourself away? Any thoughts on that, maintaining sexual purity?
I'd say go deeper, kind of like Josh was talking about, go deeper than just the act of sex. Like, figure out a little bit like why that's like not healthy before marriage. You know, go a little deeper in your thinking. Does help. Think about the person, like try to put the person before you and like serve them actually, the person you're in a relationship with, because that looks like protecting them, you know? Like you don't want, like you don't, like for, as a guy, I wouldn't want someone to get pregnant with my kid without any commitment, like, and that is totally possible no matter how much birth control you use or whatever, you know? Like it's just, it's seriously so big. It's like, it's huge. Like that could affect the rest of your life, you know? And I think going a little deeper for like 5 minutes really does help, because our culture just says that it's not a big deal, you know? Literally the culture doesn't see like anything sacred about sexuality, but it really is. And the reason it's sacred is because of how like it can really mess your life up or really bless you like crazy. So, just like in life, like we have like this crazy potential to be amazing, but this crazy potential to be like a murderer or something, you know? Like it's true, as humans, like we have that potential, and sex is like one of those things that's just like fire. You have to be super careful with it. So I would definitely say like think a little deeper. Don't just try not to sin in your own flesh, because we're not supposed to put confidence in our flesh. Like we're actually supposed to be moving towards Jesus and walking by the Spirit, which looks like learning how to love people. So if you're actively trying to love someone, then the lusting thing and using them becomes less likely. Instead of just being like, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, then I'll be righteous because I didn't sin. That's self-righteousness. So anyways, I could preach a sermon on that.
Yeah, and I just want to say, so like the Christian walk, it's full of crossroads. Like every day you come to a crossroads. Like, am I going to honor God today? Am I going to honor God in this moment? Or am I going to honor my flesh? And I truly believe like the more, like I think a lot of us, you know, will struggle with sin for the rest of our lives. But, I mean, we all will. But like, I truly believe, you guys, the more you say yes to God, like your flesh sometimes isn't as satisfying to want to, you know, honor your flesh. And the more you choose your flesh, the more that God's voice in your life gets quieter and quieter, and your flesh gets louder and louder. And so, like, you guys, every day you're going to come to a crossroads. You're going to have these moments when you're like, okay, am I going to honor God right now? Even if I don't feel like it, even if I want to honor my flesh, Or am I gonna honor my flesh, not honor God, not please God? Like your life, the Christian life, it's full of these crossroads, these moments when you're like, what am I gonna do, with this? And so I truly believe that like the less you choose your flesh, it really does, I think, it doesn't get as strong, I would say. So, yeah.
I think with sex, it's good to remember too that the issue is not the issue here. So what drives sex is, we think of it as just being this physical desire, but for women, very often it's, so if you're having sex, it's this, it's meant to be this way. It's two people becoming one. So I now have a desire for this person and an attraction for this person, and it does fill this need of like, wow, I feel protected and I feel loved. And for a guy, it can be a sense of power and accomplishment and this thing. And so oftentimes, if you have fallen into this before, analyze your heart. What is it you actually like? Could it be that your heart is seeking to be truly loved, fully known and fully loved? And going back to where Dan started this whole series, God has to be before anyone else. And that's where you're going to find that satisfaction. And so if you can camp in there, heal that heart, truly heal that heart. And I would say stay out of relationships until you know you're there. Don't just dive back into those, and alcoholic, like, okay, I've been clean and sober for 5 days, I'm going to go to the bar, I'm good. Like, no, don't do it. Stay away from some relationships till you know where you are. But think about the issues behind it and kind of deal with those before you try to jump back into another relationship.
Yeah, and have people in your life who you can be accountable to. Like guys, pornography, have your friends who you can call and be like, hey, I'm like tempted to look at this. I'm tempted to, I'm tempted to sleep with my girlfriend. Like, help me here. I mean, God has given us those. Your friends are a gift from God to you to help you in your temptations.
Maybe some quick thoughts on, so what do I do when my Christian sibling is having sex? And I presume that that's not my married Christian siblings, because I hope that my married friends are having sex. But for those that are unmarried, what do we do when we know that there are friends in our lives that are, say they're Christians, and they're actively living in this way? Any thoughts on that?
Well, sin, of course, is just one of many sins, right? So, like the Bible talks about, just going to your brother, and the biblical prescription for calling out sin, I think, applies here. It's appropriate to have a conversation, start with that person, and ask them if they know what they're doing, and kind of go through that process. If they're not interested in talking about it, then you might bring a parent or a small group leader or something like that into that conversation. I think it's